Okay, we've just finished our walk, which means it's story time. So, you ready, Chester? He's ready. All right.
Garrosh's day off. Garrosh hated time off. For many, time away represented an all too precious island of calm in the turbulent sea that was their lives. But Garrosh loved what he did. Nothing filled him with a greater sense of peace than taking his sword to an enemy, swindling the common folk out of their gold in arm wrestles, flaying freshly killed dragons, and acquiring various trinkets from the folk and places of his travels. All in all, it was a pure and wholesome life. For his day off, it was time for some adventure, some excitement, some exhilaration. He took a last bite of his owlbear claw, last bite, ate it whole, same difference, waved goodbye to his goblin cooking captive, strolled out the door of his cottage. He looked up and noticed the damage to his thatch roof where Taryn had tried and failed to climb it. He would waste at least a day fixing that. Damn that Taryn, did she ever give any thought to the actions that she performed and the impact they'd have on others? He wondered aloud. Garrosh saddled his riding warg, donned his spikiest of helmets. He wanted to look nice for the little folk. Checked that Valerie was sitting comfortably in her sidecar and set off with a plan. A plan to bring the noblest of sports, snail racing, to the peace-loving gnomes that dwelt in Mushroom Kingdom. They'd be so pleased. As he rode down the path, he thought to himself, now how do I stop Valerie, a 6-foot racing snail, from eating the gnomes that he was trying so hard to delight? Meh. Some people came with problems. Slightly better people came with solutions, but Garrosh came with racing snails and a really spiky fucking helmet. What could possibly go wrong?
Garrosh hated time off because for him it usually represented relaxation and peace, but he hated that. Garrosh loved what he did. He loved taking his sword to his enemies, swindling people out of money when wrestling them, and slaying dragons. For Garrosh's day off, he would require excitement. So he chomped down on his last bit of owlbear, said goodbye to his goblin friend, and set off out of his cottage. As leaving his cottage, he looked up and saw there was damage to the roof, where Taryn had tried climbing it. Garrosh thought to himself, that'll take me a whole day or even more to fix that. Damn that Taryn, does she ever think about the consequences of our actions or the impact it has on others? He shouted to no one. Ignoring that for another day, Garrosh found Valerie and would be setting off with her. For today, he would be snail racing for his excitement. He headed off, or setting off, to the gnome Mushroom Kingdom. As he was setting off, he wondered to himself, how would he stop his 6-foot snail from eating the little people? Meh, Garrosh said to himself, it's of no consequence. They're not that valuable, there's many of them, and continued with his journey.
So this story is called Garrosh's Day Out. Garrosh had a day off, and normally he hated days off. For him, a day of, because it usually meant days of relaxation and peace. However, for Garrosh preferred to take swords to his enemies, to take swords to dragons, and in general, fighting. So for him, this wasn't really a fun day off. As he blinked and looked up to the roof of his cottage, just before he was going to set out, he saw a massive hole in the top, and he thought to himself, that was made by Taryn, and he thought to himself, damn that Taryn, does she never think of the consequences of her actions? Does she never think about the plight that her carelessness does unto others? shaking his head, he gathered Valerie, his giant snail, for today was the great snail race of the Gnome Mushroom Kingdom. As he set off and began his walk with Valerie, he thought to himself, how on earth will I stop Valerie from eating all these little people? Meh, no consequence of mine. They're not that valuable anyway. And he carried on his merry way. Good luck.
So this story is called Garrosh's Day Out. Garrosh had a day off, and normally he hated days off because it usually meant days of relaxation and peace for other people, but he preferred to take swords to the enemies and dragons and loved to fight, so this wasn't really a day off for him. As he was about to set out, he looked up to the roof of his cottage and saw a massive hole made by Taran, and thought to himself, fuck her, why does she never consider the consequences of her actions and, never considers the feelings of other people. Anyway, he shook his head and he got his giant snail Valerie, because today was the great snail race of the known Mushroom Kingdom. As he set off and began to walk with Valerie, he thought to himself, how am I going to stop her from eating all the little people? And then he thought to himself, there's no consequence of mine as they're not really that valuable. And he went on his merry way. Good luck.
Okay, so this story is called Garrosh's Day Off. Now, Garrosh isn't the biggest fan of days off. For most people, that means relaxing and doing nothing, but no, Garrosh likes to get his sword out and fight fiends and foes and that stuff. Anyways, this wasn't quite a day off, as usual. On this day, he looked up into the roof of the cottage and noticed a Taran-shaped hole and thought, oh, fuck's sake, Taran, and gave a bit of a rant on how she doesn't think about the consequences of her actions, but decides to do nothing about it right now, because he is taking out his snail Valerie, because today is the snail races of the Mushroom Gnome Kingdom. So as he is on his way to the snail races with his snail Valerie, he's thinking to himself, how am I going to stop her eating all the little people? And then thinks, nah, do you know what, fuck it, they're not important. Sounds awful. Anyway, he carries on his merry way, and then that is the end of the story. Yeah.
So, Tara, today's story is about Garrosh and his big day off. As you might imagine, Garrosh doesn't really like sitting down and doing nothing. He's much more of a get up, grab his sword and go off slaying some demons and fiends. But today he thought he'd just try and relax a little bit, have a bit of downtime. Although it was a bit difficult with the breeze coming through the big Taran-shaped hole in his roof. He thinks, why doesn't she just think about what she's doing before she ploughs into all of these situations? But he thinks, never mind, you know what, I'm just going to try and do something for myself. So he goes over and picks up his trusty snail, Valerie, and thinks, you know what, we'll go down to the snail races at the Gnome Mushroom Kingdom and try and have a good time. So he sets off out of the house, heading off down to see the gnomes, and a thought starts to creep into his head, and he thinks, oh god, how am I gonna stop Valerie from eating all these little people? How am I gonna do this? Well, actually, you know what? I don't care. Sodom. I mean, after all, it is my day off, right? Anyway, over to you. Good luck.
Jules, hello. Hope you enjoy this little story about Garrosh and his big day off. So, as we know, Garrosh isn't the type of person to just sit around and do nothing. He likes grabbing his sword and going off and slaying fiends and demons and the like. But I thought I'm gonna relax. Relax a bit, have a bit of downtime, which was a little bit difficult because of the breeze that was coming into the room through the Taran-shaped hole in the roof. Why doesn't she think these things through before ploughing into them? He thinks, but he's not going to get too bothered by it. He goes over and picks up his snail, Valerie, and decides, you know what, I think we're going to go to the Gnome Mushroom Kingdom for a bit of snail racing. And so he sets off, going off to see these gnomes in the Mushroom Kingdom. And then he has this sudden thought, you know, oh God, what if Valerie, how am I going to stop Valerie from eating all of these little people? Which is a slightly terrifying thought, but this snail is bigger than gnomes. He realises he actually doesn't really care. It's his day off, so he's not going to bother with it. And there we have it.
It's Garrosh's day off, and he's just chilling. This is quite unusual for Garrosh, as we all know. We all know this character really well, all of us. And we all know then that he is way more comfortable out there in the field, fighting for his meals, killing demons, slaying people with his sword and stuff. But today he's decided he's going to just chill. He's sitting with a book in his house, probably in his recliner, I'm imagining. He's trying to read and he's having a lovely time. Except for the slight breeze that's coming in, just turning the pages a little bit, so having to hold those down. It's a bit of a chilly breeze, and he's thinking, wait a second, why is there a breeze? I'm inside my house. And he looks up and he sees a Taran-shaped hole in the roof. Looks at that and goes, she just never thinks these plans through thoroughly before she does them. Never mind. Okay, right. What can we do instead? And his eyes rest on the tank of his beloved racing snail, Valerie. And he remembers that he was reading about a race that was going on today, by chance, in the Gnome Mushroom Kingdom. So he's like, right, that's serendipitous. Let's head to that. Come on, Valerie. Picks Valerie up. He's marching out the door with her, and he puts her down, lets her go for a little bit, just to get a bit of exercise in. It's good for the training, the snail racing training. And then he suddenly thinks, oh, hang on, wait a second, snail racing training. There was that one module that we didn't do too well on. What was it? What was it again? It was the not eating people module. Didn't do too well on that training sector. Will she be okay not eating all these gnomes? He's like mentally sizing up how big the gnomes are. And he's like, yeah, they are about snack size for Valerie. I can't be dealing with that today. It's my day off. It's his day off, Chester. Yeah. So he decides, nope, sod it. It's too much hassle for today. Gonna go back in, have a nice bubble bath, finish that book. Maybe patch up the ceiling later, not sure. So he picks Valerie up and he heads back inside. And that's it. That's the whole story, Chester. It's finished. It's finished. Yeah. Okay, good luck whoever has next. Okay, bye.
Hi Dan, I've just had the story from Becky. Problem is I was really really distracted by watching stuff, so I'm not actually sure how much I remember. So we'll just go with it and see what happens. So this story is about Garrosh, fucking hell, good start. And yeah, he's decided out of the blue, and very unlike Garrosh, to have a day off. Normally we know that he likes being out in the field and just slicing things up with his sword. So he's sat in his house reading a book, and he notices that his pages keep being like turned a bit by some breeze coming from somewhere. And he goes, oh, actually, why is there a breeze? I'm inside my house. And he looks around and he sees a Taran-shaped hole in the roof. He's like, ugh, that damn elf never learns. She should know by now that roofs are not her domain. And now thoroughly distracted from his book, he's like, oh, what can I do instead? Just looking around the room, he's like, oh, spots Valerie's tank, his beloved racing snail. It's like, I remember reading earlier about a snail race nearby in the gnome mushroom village. Yeah, let's go win some gold. So he picks Valerie up, heads outside and starts walking to this gnome village. Decides to put Valerie down, just let her have a little run, get a bit of practice in. Then he starts to think about her training. There was a module that they failed, or that she failed, and what was it? Oh, that's right, gnome eating. Apparently Valerie likes to eat gnomes. And he then starts deciding whether or not it's a good idea to take her to a gnome village. Will she just kill them all and eat them? Which sounds like a very terrible death. He's like, oh, you know what? I can't be bothered with all that hassle. It's my day off. Let's just go back. So he picks Valerie up, heads back inside, decides to run himself a bubble bath and finish his book. That is it. And I'm not sure if it's even remotely correct. Blame Chester. Bye!
Hi. Yeah, this is weird. I don't know where this has gone, but yeah, this is something else. Okay, so this is a story about Garrosh. Now, Garrosh, being the active, slashy type that he is, took an uncharacteristic day off, and he decided that he was going to spend his time indoors and he would read. Now, he was taking a bit of time to read, and every so often he'd feel a little bit of a breeze that was kind of turning the pages a little bit, which he found a bit weird, but didn't pay much attention to it. And then eventually it got to the point that this breeze was still so persistent that he had to stop reading and think, well, what is it that's doing this? So he had to look around his house, and lo and behold, there was a Taran-shaped hole in the roof. It's like, oh, damn that elf. When is she ever going to learn that some not her thing? So, now thoroughly disturbed from reading, but deciding to ignore the fact that he's got a hole in his roof, he decides that he's going to do something else with his day off. And whilst looking around, he sees Valerie's tank. Valerie being his beloved racing snail, and he thought, oh yes, that's what I can do. I remember reading the other day that there was a snail race. So, picking up Valerie, he decided to head out to where the race was being held, which was the Mushroom Gnome Village. Which was a bit weird. But nonetheless, he trudges on, and halfway, he decides to have a bit of a break. He puts Valerie down, and all the while he's thinking there's something in the back of his head, thinking, forgetting something. There was one section of Valerie's training that she could never get right, and that she always failed. And apparently that section was deciding that it wasn't really a good idea to take Valerie the gnome eater to the mushroom gnome kingdom, the village. He decided to pick her up and spare all of the grisly snail deaths of the gnomes, and decided to go home instead. So he got home, again completely ignoring the fact that he's not got a watertight roof, decided that he was going to have a bubble bath. And that was how Garrosh finished off his day off, neck deep in suds.
So this is a story about Garrosh. Everyone's favourite Garrosh. Everyone loves Garrosh. He's the big, tanky, slashy, active dude. And one day Garrosh decides he's going to take a day off, which is a bit uncharacteristic for him. He's usually like really full on, but he decides, nope, gonna take a day off, gonna chill out at home, I'm gonna read some books, it's gonna be great. So he goes home and he reads some books, and as he's reading the books, there's a little bit of a breeze, and the breeze occasionally sort of fluffs up the pages for him and sort of turns the page for him. It's a bit weird, but he doesn't really think much about it, he doesn't pay any attention to it. And then eventually the breeze gets so heavy, so like such a big breeze, that he sort of thinks like, hang on, this is weird, something's going on, what is doing that? And he sort of looks around and has a look around, and then he looks up and he sees a big old Terran-shaped hole in the ceiling. Damn, that elf, she should know that roofs just aren't her thing, he thinks to himself. And then he decides to, maybe now's time to stop reading, maybe it's time to go do something else. And so he packs up his books and he looks around his house, and he sees Valerie, his lovely, wonderful racing snail Valerie, and he thinks to himself, oh, love that snail. I read about a snail race a couple of days ago. I should go and see if that's still on. It's down in the mushroom gnome village. So he goes over to Valerie's tank and he opens it up and picks Valerie up and decides to take her down to the mushroom gnome village where the race is. That's either a different type of gnome village or a different type of mushroom, your choice. Halfway through he decides that, been a bit of a long trek, maybe it's time for a break. So he puts Valerie down and he takes a break, and there's something bugging him. He's sure there's something bugging him that he just can't remember what it was. And then he remembers, yeah, there's one bit of Valerie's training that he just never could quite get right. So think about it, it was yeah, Valerie just can't stop eating gnomes. So I guess it is a gnome village then after all. So he decides, to avoid the slaughter of countless gnomes, and potentially countless gnome snails as well. Or snail gnomes, mushroom gnomes, whatever. He decides to take Valerie back, and let's just go home and pretend that nothing happened. It's fine. So he goes back home and he puts Valerie back in her tank and closes it up, and then completely ignores the big massive hole in his ceiling that's probably letting in quite a bit more of a breeze by now, but I don't know. And then he decides, you know what, it's time for a bubble bath. Bubble baths are great. So he goes to his bath, turns it on, fills it up with bubbles, and relax. And that's where the story ends. Good luck.
Garrosh, the good old sword bashing, happy smacking, all around good egg Garrosh, decided he was going to have a day off from all of the mauling and savagery. He's not very savage, he's quite a nice orc really, but he's going to have a day off. So he settled himself down in a nice easy chair, and he's reading a lovely book, probably a book of recipes, right? Yeah. And as he's reading the book, there's kind of like a nice gentle breeze. It turns the pages for him. It's very scenic and lovely. And then the breeze starts to get stronger and a little bit cold. And he's like, well, this is a bit unpleasant. So he's looking around. He's like, I didn't leave the door open. And then he sees that there's a Terran-shaped hole in the ceiling. And he's like, huh. And then apparently thinks no more of it. And is like, well, I've got a day off, what should I do? And he's like, oh, I know. There is a snail race over in a neighbouring mushroom gnome village. so I should take Valerie on an outing. We could go and win some cash, you know, fame and glory, all that stuff at this basically like snail Grand National. So he goes over to Valerie's cage, puts Valerie into, I assume, like a travel box, and they set off to this mushroom gnome village to go to the snail Grand National. And as he's walking, Garrosh is like, I'm sure I've forgotten something really important. Don't remember what it is. It's probably nothing. Eventually he arrives at the mushroom gnome village, and he's on his way to go and enter the race, and he suddenly thinks, oh, I know what I forgot. Valerie eats both mushrooms and gnomes, so this was a terrible idea. And then, you know, never defeated, always optimistic. So all right, back home then. So goes trotting back to his house, and then he gets home, acknowledges the Taran-shaped hole in the ceiling again. Oh yeah, just leaves it there. Puts Valerie back into her tank, and then thinks, you know what I should have on my day off? A bubble bath. So Garrosh goes to his bathroom and runs himself a delightful bubble bath, like scented candles, lavender oil, all that fun shit. And then he gets in the bath and relaxes. The end. Whatever that was.